Dear invitees, thank you for coming to our event organized by European Food Forum. And thank you, Luis Yela, our director, for organizing this. My colleague Irene Tolere, chair of this forum, unfortunately cannot be with us today. The idea was to organize this debate with you. As you know, European Food Forum is initiated by some member of European Parliament with the idea to be in touch with the stakeholders, with you on several important subject that we have on the agenda, on the legislative agenda, to have exchange of opinions, informations with you. And this is the case today also with proposal of the Commission now on our table related to reduction of food waste directive. Food waste, as you know, come with economic, social, and environmental problems that we have to tackle as a society. And this is not only an environmental and economic problem, but it's also a moral one, an ethical one, thinking at the people who cannot afford the food. So we should reduce food waste, not only for economical reason and environmental, and these are already two very important reasons, but also we in European Union, not only elsewhere in the world, we have this problem with some part of our society, a problem of access to food. These last decades, we took cheap food for granted, and sometimes also because of the low price of food. This is usual for several of our citizens, and they find normal to find cheap food or as cheap as possible, even if we know, working in this field, that food is not cheap to produce, to process, and to distribute. This is also one of the objectives of our public policies, to maintain food as cheap as possible. But I think we are now in a moment when we have to discuss the reality and not to take access to food, take it for granted, even in European Union. And I think a reduction of food waste is one of the ways to be more aware about the real price of food and how to do and what we should do in order to reduce the waste. In European Union, we have 131 kilo of food per inhabitant wasted every year. Over half of this is generated by consumers. More than 50%, 53%. And this is also a consuming behavior problem. Maybe we will discuss today about that also. And then follow it by processing and manufacturing sector with 20%. In July last year, so as I mentioned, the Commission came with a proposal setting legally binding waste reduction for all member states to be achieved by 2030. And next week, we will vote in the plenary on the Waste Framework Directive report that we have in the Parliament, in ENVI committee. So what is in the ENVI committee report? The ENVI report proposed 20% joint reduction target in processing and manufacturing, and at least 40% in retail, restaurants, other food services and households. Evaluation of possibility to increase these targets to 30% and 50% respectively to be reached by 2035. And I would like to hear your opinion whether it is possible and in which way this is possible. Furthermore, the reports propose the average of 2020 and 2022 years as a reference period, as opposed to 2020 in the Commission proposal. In the Parliament, several colleagues think that 2020 year is not a good reference because it's a atypical year because of COVID. I am also happy to see that the report includes more reference to exchanging best practices between member states and more coordination between actors in the supply chain, because beyond these binding targets, we think that it's important to have also an exchange of good practices, and not only to fix how much we want to reduce food waste, but how to do and which are the best practices already experienced on the spot and who can be spread. The report also introduced an assessment for introducing reduction targets for the primary sector to be done by European Commission by end of 2025. We will discuss less today about primary sector, which is with the lowest level of food waste in Europe, with around 20%. So the biggest problem is in our behavior as consumer, retail, and processing, restoration, and so on. The event is also a good occasion to discuss with you, with all actors, about how can they contribute to meeting these targets. And I would also like to thank all of you for attending this meeting, and especially to our friend Shelley Pingree, which is a congresswoman, US representative, very involved in United States on food waste reduction, with experience on the spot, with legislative proposal. And it would be very interesting to see the perspective coming from United States. So having said that, let me, in the first panel, for the opening remarks, to give the floor to Serenela Sala, who is head of the Land Resources and Supply Chain Assessment Unit in the GRC in European Commission. So European Commission who made these proposals. The proposal of European Commission is based on the studies made by GRC. So I will give the floor to Serenela. She's connected, no?
Yes, I'm
just
here.
One sec. Serenela, 1 second. I just would like to welcome also another member of the European Food Forum, Mr. Franco Bogovic, the member of the European Parliament.
Serenela, if I may, just some minutes. Sorry, Franco, I didn't see you. If you want to say some words, 2 minutes.
I will join later.
Okay. Okay, so please, Serenela.
Yes, I see that I cannot share the screen. So if it's possible to enable that, I will then move my slides. Otherwise, okay, we go with that. So thanks a lot for inviting me. And as I said, the Joint Research Center of the European Commission was actually supporting with studies the impact assessment of the proposal of the legislation, but it was also doing a number of different underpinning studies that are somehow informing the actions that could be done in relation to food waste. And my brief presentation is aiming just at giving you a little bit the state of the art in this respect, and I hope also to stimulate a bit the discussion on the interplay between the food waste and other policy initiatives that are somehow affected by the food waste or can help achieving the targets. So if you can move to the next slide. So this type of work and support that we were giving to the evaluation of the food waste target is really an example of the work that the Joint Research Center is doing in terms of anticipating policy needs and anticipating with the research where we might need evidences to integrate knowledge coming from different sources, and especially for what concern the possible actions to tackle the food waste, this interdisciplinarity is a key. And then we work towards the impact. So we aim at positively impacting society. And in this case, I would say that a topic like the food waste is really very horizontal in terms of the societal involvement that is needed to achieve the target. It was said already which were the let's say, initial target proposed in the legislation, so a reduction by 10% in processing and manufacturing and 30% in retail, restaurants, food service, and households. So next slide. We are facing really a staggering number in relation to food waste, because we are speaking about almost 60 million tons per year generated. If we look at the entire emissions of greenhouse gases from the food system, meaning from the primary production to manufacturing, to distribution, to retail, to consumption, actually 16% of these total emissions are attributed to what is actually then at the end wasted. And it's also related to the 12% of water use in the food system. And as it was mentioned, it is associated with also a very high amount in terms of market value, something like 130 billion euros. So our research was aimed at supporting food waste reduction and food waste actions towards a number of actions that we did. First of all, we understood that was important to model the generation of food waste at the EU and at the member state level. There was not a model before that was basically connecting all the dots of the food system from the primary production in Europe, including what is imported from outside Europe, how these these products are then processed, because not all the food we are consuming, of course, is fresh food, and how along the supply chain of food we might have generation of certain amount of food waste. So not only the food waste happening at the consumer stage, but also what is happening all along. And then the idea was to be able to assess the environmental impacts associated to the food waste and to identify the best practice for the food waste prevention. So we were working together with DG Sante since many years on the food waste prevention. So there was, let's say, already seminal work in this direction even before the impact assessment of the current proposed legislation. And then we were working on unveiling possible trade-offs in food waste prevention, because this is something that we have to be aware and to tackle. Not all the actions have the same efficacy or efficiency, and to prioritize the actions that are generating most value added is really a key. Then in the latest years, we were supporting directly the impact assessment of the legislative proposal that was released in last July. And we were also contributing to an European Parliament project that is specifically addressing consumer food waste. So what is happening and what can be done at this stage. So next slide. As I said, one of our last contribution was actually this support to the evaluation of the options in the impact assessment for the legislative proposal on food waste reduction target. And there we were not only assessing the environmental impacts of food waste and the benefits of reaching the targets, but we were also supporting the public consultation. So we were trying really to systematize the knowledge on what is available in terms of actions for the reduction, but also in the views of the stakeholders in terms of the relevance of the food waste concern. And then the work that was conducted and that is in the reports of the JRC, including the reports that will be released in 1 month, is really to have a sort of state of the art of the food waste prevention. So to understand to which extent the different member states were already active. Very briefly, I show you in the upcoming slides some highlights of the work that we were doing. Next slide is just showing you, I hope you can see in the room, not so small the figure, but I mean on the right, on the left side, you see this model. So this idea of being able in terms of mass, of kilograms of food, to understand how much of this food is produced and consumed in Europe, and for each stage, if life cycle stage of the supply chain, to be able to estimate this food waste. This is one of the examples where this exercise is not relevant just in terms of identifying in which sectors and for which food type we might have a prioritization to be made in terms of reduction, but also as a link to other possible policies. Because of, for example, there is an amount of food waste generated in the manufacturing stage that could be reduced and potentially can be used for producing other products as a secondary biomass. And this is something, for example, that is linking the food waste discussion with bioeconomy. And then with this model, we were able also to understand which are the main typologies or fresh and processed food that are consumed. And linked to that, we were able also, next slide, to assess the environmental impacts of food waste and the benefits to reach the target. So we were adopting life cycle assessments, so approaches of environmental impacts that are really telling you which are the impacts from the primary production to the waste management. And as I mentioned before, the food waste, and this is what you can see on the right side, is basically responsible for a large share of what are the entire impacts of the food system. So it has really a priority for interventions, not only for economic, but also for environmental reasons. And if you move to the next slide, it's clear from the analysis of the European context that it's predominant the role of the consumption stage. And so the most of the effort, let's say, on food waste prevention should really go in that direction because not only, as we said, for economic reasons, but also for the amount of emissions that we can avoid. Next slide. From the public consultation was clear that the level of concern is high because the level of concern was for 58% of the respondents in the public consultation that they were very concerned about the food waste, and 31st concern really in terms of the amount that was generated. And there was a pretty high agreement, so the strong agreement of 47% with legally binding food waste reduction targets. So this was something that was informed also the proposal. Next slide. But if we look at what the member states were able to do so far, the majority of the actions are actions at consumer level, so are related to monitoring the actions or having awareness campaign. But then there are some countries where there are overarching national policies addressing food waste, food donation facilitation, supply chain efficiency, and the adoptions of financial instruments. Of course, this is a little bit scattered picture, let's say, of what is happening across the member states. Next slide. Let's say that the majority of the member states are in the light orange bar. So in an early stage of development, monitoring, and evaluation of the actions, while just a couple of member states are able already to have evidence-based policy that are, let's say, well structured to be able to reach the target. So there is a work to be done at different level, including what can be done by the different member states. And this is why, next slide, the JRC was investing so much energy in addressing and analyzing the best practices available from the first report that was really aiming at strengthening the evidence base for food waste prevention, to distilling some recommendation for action in food waste prevention, to the report that we recently published in the context of these European Parliament projects on tool best practices and recommendation focusing on the consumer food waste, with a compendium that is available in all the languages of the different member states in Europe. And I'm going towards the end, just mentioning that next slide, this project of the European Parliament is actually managed by DG Sante in cooperation with us, and this is a multidisciplinary forum with researchers and practitioners that are coming from all across Europe and are helping the JRC really to connect, to do a collective intelligence exercise to collect information and to really see where the tool and the best practice can add most of the value. And I conclude with the last slide because, as I mentioned, not all the actions have the same level of effectiveness and efficiency. And we launched some years ago, and is now even further refined, a calculator for the prevention action. So a possibility of assessing the cost and the benefit economically and environmentally of the different initiatives. This is freely available, and is something that may guide the actions. So I think the slides will be made available. We also added a few links if you are interested to download and access our information. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Serenella, for this introduction. I will please stay with us if you will have questions from the participants in the second part of the event. So now I will go straight to the first panel, reducing food waste in manufacturing and key enablers for the transition towards more sustainable food system. So here we'll have the interventions of Katie Carson, Director of Corporate Affairs, Food and Climate Policy to Tetra Pak, an important company in this field, and Silvia Laforese with both experience in public institutional affairs, but also now senior manager in public affairs in Food and Drink Europe, European professional organizations. So I propose to you an intervention of 5-6 minutes, and then we will take one question if there are questions. And of course, we'll have a second session of questions and answers in the second part of the event. So please, Katie.
Thank you, and thank you to the European Food Forum and the hosting MEPs, Mr. Cholos and Ms. Tolleret in her absence, for the invitation to speak at this session today on the important topic of food loss and waste reduction. We've heard about the magnitude, and we all are aware of the magnitude of the issue and the impacts of food loss and waste, not only from an environmental perspective, but also from a social and economic perspective. And addressing food loss and waste, it is indeed challenging, but solutions are available, as I'm sure we will hear more about today from the panel discussion. And policy can certainly play an important enabling role to accelerate the uptake of solutions to address the issue. We've also heard that food loss and waste does occur throughout the food supply chain, so from production, post-harvest handling and storage, processing, distribution and consumption, and therefore we do really need to act collectively to address the issue. Our focus at Tetra Pak is on the role of food processing technologies and packaging solutions in enabling the transition to more sustainable food systems, and reducing food loss and waste is one of our key focus areas. But maybe first a few words on Tetra Pak, if we can move to the next slide. At Tetra Pak, I think we're best known for our packaging solutions. So our aseptic beverage cartons, which keep perishable liquid food safe with prolonged shelf life. But we're also a food processing equipment and technology supplier with over 100,000 processing units in operation globally, and all supported by an extensive range of services, therefore very much an end-to-end solutions provider for the food and beverage industry. Of our 20,000 employees globally, about half, 10,000 are based in Europe, and we have 22 production sites, including both packaging materials as well as processing equipment. We know that solutions to food loss and waste reduction will require cooperation, and we're working with many different partners. Several of them are here around the table today, including, of course, our customers in the food industry, to reduce losses during the manufacturing process, as well as ensuring optimal packaging, which contributes to reducing waste at retail, food service, and consumer level. If we could move to the next slide, please. So as an integral part of the food value chain, we do understand the urgency of transforming food systems through a holistic approach that recognizes the intricate interconnections between food production, consumption, and environmental sustainability. And as part of our food systems approach, we have identified 4 concrete pathways where we as a company can have an impact and contribute to enabling the transformation of global food systems within an evidence-based policy environment. And last year, during COP28, we launched our food systems sustainability framework with ambitions and concrete targets, including on food loss and waste. We also launched a series of white papers on how food systems in 2040 will need to transition to better sustain our planet and its people, and pathway papers, including on food loss and waste, looking specifically at the key enablers for action, so policy, investment, technology and innovation, and partnerships. And as I said, one of those 4 pathways is reducing food loss and waste, so really leveraging the potential of food processing and packaging solutions, including new innovative technologies to turn, for example, side streams of food production into value-added products. And I'd like to just give some examples if we could move to the next slide. So what role can food processing technologies and packaging concretely play in reducing food loss and waste? Increasing the efficiency of and optimizing food production, for example, using digital solutions. So for instance, predictive maintenance can avoid unplanned stoppages, which can generate considerable amounts of waste. And the use of AI, for instance, can ensure consistent quality of production, also potentially reducing waste within the manufacturing of food products. And as part of our commitments, we have set ourselves a target to achieve a 50% reduction of product loss in our best practice processing lines by 2030, so aligned with the global SDGs. And of course, we need to ensure the right packaging solutions for longer food shelf life and traceability. And aseptic packaging, such as Tetra Pak cartons, can help to extend the shelf life of perishable food up to 12 months without refrigeration or preservatives. And this can contribute to reduce food waste at retail and consumption level. But I'd also like to say, if we could move to the next slide, like to highlight how innovative processing and production technologies can contribute to reducing food loss and waste and increase resource efficiency, here with a couple of examples. The first one is in relation to transforming byproducts into valuable ingredients. And Salah mentioned this previously. One example is brewers' spent grain, which is a side stream of the brewing process, the brewing industry. And generally, this BSG goes to landfill or to animal feed. We've developed a technology which can sterilize these spent grains and ensure that they stay within the food value chain, so to be further processed into ingredients, for example, within bakery products or plant-based ingredients. Another example is how technology can be leveraged for resource optimization. So we have developed at Tetra Pak a unique processing method for soya drinks using the whole soya bean in production. So generally, about 50 to 60% of the soybean is actually utilized. So the husk or the okara is discarded, which causes waste within that manufacturing process. But by using 100% of the bean, we can optimize resources, reduce waste during manufacturing, and actually we improve the overall nutritional content by doing so. And if we could move to the last slide, I'd like to speak about the role of policy in enabling the reduction of food loss and waste. So technology solutions certainly have a role to play, but they need to be supported by an enabling policy environment. At Tetra Pak, we support ambitious, legally binding food waste reduction targets in line with the SDGs. But we also need to recognize that, we need to be able to measure food loss and waste. What gets measured gets managed. So we need to measure food loss and waste across the food supply chain so we know where it is occurring to identify the most effective mitigation measures. We need recognition and support for innovative solutions through appropriate policy and financial instruments and frameworks. And of course, we need to continue to foster education and awareness-raising activities on food loss and waste prevention for all actors along the food supply chain, including consumers. And finally, we need coherence and alignment across policies. So to achieve high ambitions, food loss and waste objectives need to be supported by and reflected across other policies, such as packaging policy, to avoid the risk of unintended consequences. So I think with that, I will pause here and thank you for your attention and look forward to the discussion with the other panel members.
Thank you. I will give the floor now to Sylvia Laforest to present the perspective of Food Drink Europe, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thanks to the European Food Forum for inviting us again. For those who do not know Food Drink Europe, we represent the whole industry of food and drink manufacturers in Europe, so nearly 300,000 companies. I would like to give you today some examples on what some of our members do to prevent food waste, but I won't give you nearly 300,000 examples. I'll pick a few. But before I get into that, I would like to quickly echo what Kathy was mentioning in terms of policy measures that could help the fight against food waste, and all of what you've mentioned in terms of better data collection, checking the trade-offs between one piece of legislation and the other one. It's also something that Food Drink Europe, of course, agrees with. Of course, so we know we've been talking about food waste for many, many years now, and if we keep talking about that, it's because I'd say clearly a lot has been done, but more needs to be done. So the question is, how can we do more? How can we further share the best practices also that the JRC was mentioning? And many of our members have been strongly committed to the fight against food waste, especially in the past decade, I would say, since the adoption of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So I'll just bring you a few examples, but as I said, there are plenty of virtuous members that we have in Food Drink Europe. But one is, for instance, from the fruit and vegetable processors, so those who produce jams or ready-to-eat peas and carrots. And for example, what they do is to use leftover biomass that is not suitable for consumption and turn it into not only electricity or like energy that we might already be familiar with, but also, for instance, pure CO2. That is used in liquid form for greenhouse horticulture, or can also be used as dry ice for cooling foodstuffs. So that's an example from the food and vegetable processors. Another one is potato crisps producers, partnering with also an example from the brewing industry, but in that case is from using the CO2 that is captured in beer fermentation. So mix it with potato waste and produce organic fertilizers that would be used in the next potato crop. So also, as Kathy was mentioning, keeping the byproduct in the food value chain. And another example is from a popular brand for sauces that took an initiative more consumer-facing to help consumers with some ideas on how to use the leftover in the fridge. Because apparently, according to some research, if consumers just 1 day per week use the ingredients and the food that they have left in the fridge, this could reduce household food waste by 1/3. So this other member of ours came up with the flexible recipes to help consumers tackle that issue. What can be done? Certainly looking at the future, certainly further sharing the best practices, but also looking into more solutions. And to look into more solutions, we will have to look at innovation, research, new technologies, new uses of byproducts, and all that comes with investment into innovation. So this is one call that we have as Food Drink Europe for the next mandate as well, more broadly, but it still remains very relevant also when we talk about food waste, so supporting innovation. And another idea that we had, we wouldn't know necessarily how to roll it out, but is indeed to look at better cooperation along the chain. So how to, let's call it that way, have a better matchmaking between food demanded and food produced along the chain. It could be the subject of a project, for example, or a EU project or some research coordinated by the JRC or the Commission, but so looking at a better cooperation along the chain as well. And now I would like to take this opportunity also to raise a couple of points. As we talk about in the revision of the directive targets, 10% or 20%, whatever the target will be, but we believe it is important before setting targets to have solid, robust data, to have a good data set. And still we see that nowadays, that's what we hear from members, that the way data are collected across Europe is not always harmonized. So certainly more work needs to be done in that direction. And in this sense, we would welcome if the Commission came up with some guidance that is both for public authorities, but also for the private operators on how to properly collect data on food waste. And the other conversation that we believe should still be continued is on what we mean by food waste, because indeed in most of the cases, what is discarded, let's say, in our operations or even in other steps of the chain is still reused as byproducts. So it's not wasted in the sense of incinerated necessarily. So when we look at food waste prevention or reduction, what do we really have in mind? Because I'm thinking of the data, for example, as we are in Belgium, I'm thinking of the data from OVAM, which is the Flemish Public Waste Agency. There is a report that was published not too long ago, and according to this report, in the food processing bit, only 0.9% of the food waste regenerated was really incinerated. All the rest was used in another way. So I think we have to have this conversation about what do we consider as waste. And I think I'll stop here for the moment, but happy to take questions.
Thank you. So I retain from both of your interventions, preventions, innovation, binding target, but before that to have data collection, and of course education of the consumers and in general of the partners, and as I mentioned in the introduction, our behavior. Certainly we should change our behavior. I don't know if you have one question for one of the two interventions. Yes, please, Frank.
Good afternoon to everybody. Thanks for this. Just one question. I heard, I agree with this what was said, and it's really important. I'm from Slovenia. I was mayor, now I'm here in the parliament, and if I compare with communal wastes and other things, for us it was crucial that we worked at the beginning of 2000 with children in kindergarten and in schools. So I think the best way to learn us is to go to kindergarten and start there, and this was very useful in our case. But my question goes in this direction about coherent policies, you said, Katie. And please elaborate a little bit more, because I think that we are here in the European Parliament, we accept a lot of regulation, and coherence of this regulation is an question. Be perhaps more concrete about this, because I think that it's good to listen that it's really, we need this holistic approach, and sometimes we destroy what with one regulation, what we did in different are here any cases, and that we will understand a little more about this, our coherent policies.
Indeed, and I think it's about, when we talk about food systems, we do now talk about this interconnected and integrated approach that we need to take to sustainability within food systems, and that includes when looking at policy. So I gave the one example of when we're looking at food loss and waste, for instance, we need to consider the role of, for example, food packaging, and we also have packaging regulations which are under discussion. We also need to consider the impact on food security, for instance, of different regulations and policies within the sort of broader food policy area. So it's ensuring that we don't sort of consider policies in isolation as one specific piece of policy or regulation, but think about the implications and the consequences across other policy areas as well.
Thank you. If there are no other, please.
Maybe I can react quickly. My name is Krystyna Lisecki. I work in DG Sante on food loss and waste. Part of a small team who also worked on the development of the targets proposal. Just to mention a few quick tools that DG Sante has worked on in order to support food waste prevention across the food supply chain. So in terms of innovation support, we have a few projects ongoing now through Horizon Europe, but also Horizon 2020, the previous program, looking at the link between food waste and marketing standards, but also climate change, microbiome solutions for packaging. In terms of further work to harmonize data, the delegated decision that imposes this obligation for member states to measure, this came together with some work together with colleagues at Eurostat, so the European Statistical Office. We worked together on guidance to help member states to harvest, to gather this data on food waste at each stage of the food supply chain. So this depends, of course, a lot on what type of data they decide to use. So we also work with them to explain this, further to their own stakeholders. And in terms of policy area integration, at least at EU level, we always reinforce this message, and this was also part of the Farm to Fork strategy, the need to integrate policies and to make sure that that we consider the trade-off. So from our side, we work very closely on food donation policies with colleagues from DG Employment, for example, considering the European Social Fund, the European Fund for the Most Deprived. We work with colleagues from DG Agriculture, with DG Environment on the Waste Framework Directive, and many, many other DGs. Thank you.
Thank you. Of course, talking about coherence of policies is, I say by my own experience, is easier to say than to do. And this is, I think, one of the biggest issue at EU level, to be more efficient in the way that we are working between our institutions, but also on building vision, because food, agriculture, safety of food, nutrition, environment, management of natural resources, all these things are connected, but we are treating in our policies in a silos approach, one by one. And I think talking about education of consumers, we also have to do education of policymakers, of our administrations, to encourage them to work together, because we have some, how to say, ego at institutional level. Each one knows better than the colleague how to do things, and we pay rather expensive this. So let's move now, because we told about innovation, about good practices. Let's go to the second panel, reducing food waste at retail and restaurants. We have several speakers here. Hannah Eld, Group Experience Marketing Manager to Electrolux Group, will talk us about food waste and refrigeration. Then we'll have Avik Mukhia, CO to fresh flow. It's an interesting AI tool. Let's see what you can do and what we can do with that. Then we'll have Jana Wilwock, representative of the EU office from ALDI South Group. Christoph Dierksens, yes, Global Public Affairs Director, Too Good to Go, an application for access to food with risk to be wasted. And we'll have Enrico Derfinger, Chief President of Eurotalks International, a very experienced chef with an influence in this sector, and it will be very interesting to see how you can encourage reduction of food waste. So let's start with Hannah Eld. I propose still 5 minutes intervention and then to be followed by an exchange. So Hannah is online, I think. Please, Hannah.
I hope you can hear me. Thank you so much for having me here in this very interesting panel and also important discussion. So I have some slides to share. I hope it will be shared. Yes. Great. So as said, I'm working as Group Experience Marketing Manager at Electrolux, but I also have a master degree in food science and have been working for several years in R&D developing fridge technologies and test methods. So this is really a topic that is close to my heart. So let's go to the next slide and see a brief agenda of what I will talk about. So I will first talk about our consumers and then our innovation, then go into how we can raise awareness, and of course, have a look at the future and our challenges. So we can directly go to the next slide and talk about the consumers. So we are a consumer-centric organization that always puts our consumers in first place. And I'm also here in that context to represent consumers and households, since that's where we have our appliances. In my role, I always need to adapt and be open for consumer needs. That's how we can create better solutions and experience. Our goal is to make healthy and sustainable eating the preferred choice in 2030. And one very strong contributing factor to this is to minimize food waste. That's why it's so important to us. If we go to the next slide, we can see some statistical data because consumer voices are very important to us. We always base our innovation and technology on their needs and demands. Recently, we have seen a growing trend in sustainability and minimizing food waste. For instance, this study shows here that our consumers feel very bad for wasting food. And we need to address this issue and facilitate for less food waste in the households. When it comes to food preservation, so working with the fridge and the freezer, making food last longer is something we have done for a very long time. But there's still a lot more that we can do in this area. We can directly go to the next slide, where we see our technology and innovations. So one might think that the fridge is only a white box that keeps your food cold and keeps it fresh for longer, but there's so much more inside the fridge, and there's a lot that can be done to make the food preservation even better. We are always striving to do better and more innovative ways to preserve foods, and we have always done. Just to mention different compartments and how we work with them, I have listed here in this slide some of them. So when we're talking about the crisper, we're meaning the vegetable drawer that you usually find in the bottom of the fridge. And in that drawer, we can work with optimal temperatures, with humidity control, and also the organization. When it comes to chillers, chiller is a specific compartment for meat and fish that has a little bit lower temperature. And also we have different settings for different kind of foods to make them last longer also in the chiller. Fresh food compartment, that is the shelf, the fridge that you see when you open the door. Even here, it's very important with even temperature, also air circulation. also to prevent dry air, organization, lighting, and easy to clean. Also, the freezer is very important. In my mind, the freezer is the hero when it comes to reducing food waste. Here we can work with organization, but also to keep this very low, stable temperature. We even have some specific settings, specific compartments for leftover preservation, where the consumer can select a setting to make the leftovers stay fresh for longer. By internal research and development, but also partnerships with universities, we can get better understanding in how food is preserved better, how different foods needs different environment, and how we can make our products better. So food science is extremely important to us. We can quickly go to the next slide and just take a deep dive in the compartment that I already mentioned. So the crisper, the vegetable compartment. It makes a lot of sense to actually develop the crisper, since fruit and vegetables is the category where we see most waste. So putting fruit and vegetables in a dedicated drawer is essential for longer preservation, but also make it optimized so that it can last even longer. As you see here, we have also seen that vitamins are preserved for longer when also the fruit and vegetables are kept for longer. So it's a win-win. You will have healthier food, but also less food waste. We can go directly to the next slide again. Since sustainability is very important to us, we are doing a lot of improvement in both our production and products. We usually offer everything as a whole package of sustainability with recycled materials, energy saving, food waste reduction, and also healthier foods. Because we can control what we're doing in our factories and with our appliances, but we cannot really control what the consumer is doing in their households, how much food they are actually throwing away. But we can educate and nudge them through our communication and through our appliances. And in the next slide, we will see how we can do that. So besides our technologies, we can try to nudge and teach our consumers how to live more sustainable. It can be as easy as just giving 5 basic tips, as you see here, about having the right settings, right placement, caring for leftovers, don't overloading the fridge, cleaning it, and so on. And those kind of tips we can publish in guidelines online. We also have an app where we try to help consumers to store food in the right place, and so on. Also, you see here a picture of a banana, and this comes from the website called Replate. This is where we have a lot of recipes and tips and tricks what you can do with your leftovers. The website has been developed together with Electrolux Food Foundation in collaboration with chefs and different researchers. So this is 2 ways how we can communicate and educate our consumers beyond our appliances. In the last slide and next slide, we can see into the future. So we will always look for new techniques for preservation and try to research and see how we can use those. New trends needs maybe new ways of preservation, and new ways of living needs new appliances. So we need to adapt to this. Also, connectivity and smartness is a very growing topic, as you know, also coming with AI. We are trying to find the most meaningful ways to help our consumers to minimize their waste with these new techniques. I also believe that through partnerships, we can create collaborations for ways of reducing waste in the households. But there are, of course, also challenges. We always want to stay relevant for consumers. So right innovation in the right time. Also, the area of sustainability and green claims is very crowded. So we need to know how to stand out and show that we are committed and what we're saying is actually true. And of course, having the right technology, what to go for, what will be a success. So we need to prioritize. This was all for me. I will not go to my last slide to save some time for discussion. So
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Talking about AI, I will give the floor to Avik Mukia, CEO to FreshFlow. So Avik is a machine learning scientist and also entrepreneur, and he developed and sold an AI solution to grocery retail. So please tell us about your project.
Hi, everyone. It's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me and FreshFlow. So yeah, as I was already introduced, I'm the co-founder and CEO at FreshFlow. We're an AI startup based in Berlin and Paris now as well. We have the mission to reduce food waste along the entire fresh food supply chain. So we really focus on ultra fresh products. And specifically right now, we're focused on the last step in the fresh food supply chain, which is grocery retail. So what we do is we help grocery retailers reduce their fresh food waste, so for their fresh food categories, by around 20 to 25% by using AI to help them order better. And I think to explain this, I first need to describe the problem to you. So let's get to the challenge within grocery retail and fresh produce. Next slide, please. So up to 15% of a supermarket's fresh produce ends up in the trash every day. That is a massive problem for them, not just from a financial perspective, but it's also obviously, as you guys are very well aware of, a big ecological problem. And I think depending on the person you're talking to at the retailer, you can use either arguments, and actually both arguments hold true. So this is one of those rare cases where reducing food waste actually is aligned with business KPIs for the supermarket, which makes our job easier to convince them to use a solution like ours. But I'll get to that. So next slide, please. So fresh produce makes up 10% of a supermarket's revenue, so it's actually not that much. But since we're talking about produce here, it's of course highly perishable. And so it makes up 40% of the food waste that a supermarket generates. So it's a really good starting point for us. And then please skip 2 slides. Yeah, and then the next one. Yeah, so let's talk about a big reason why the waste is so high in the supermarkets for produce. And that is because it's incredibly hard for a produce manager in the produce department to order the right amount of product every day. Let's imagine we're a produce manager on the shop floor and we need to order strawberries for tomorrow. Well, how did they sell last week? How did they sell last year? How long will they remain fresh on the shelf if I do order them? Is it going to be sunny tomorrow? Do I have local events coming up? We're going to have to go through this mental exercise every single day for 200 different products. And if we order too little of the strawberries, we'll have stockouts, we'll lose sales, we'll anger our customers. We don't want to have empty shelves for sure. But if we order too much, then we're going to have waste. We're going to destroy our KPIs financially for the store. And it's going to be very unfortunate to then have to throw them away. So please, next one. And next one. Yeah, so this is basically the difference and the surgical decision that someone on the shop floor needs to make every day between ordering too little and ordering too much. And we routinely see containers full of these fresh produce items every day behind the storages of those supermarkets. Next one. So the produce department, how it works is, as I said, it's completely manual. You do have people on the shop floor, though, that do a surprisingly good job at doing this mental decision with ordering. And those are people that have been working there for 10 years, 20 years, and they were really able to build up that mental model for what item, how many customers want. And they actually do a good job at this. But those people are becoming increasingly rare to find because you have a big skilled labor shortage within the grocery retail space. So it all compounds on, this 15% waste rate and a pretty pressing need for supermarkets to reduce this. So next slide, please. Now, none of what I've told you is new. The problem of determining order quantities for retailers is as old as retail itself. And the first question any of you should ask is, if this is such a big problem, why isn't there already software, like a forecasting software or something, that helps people look at data and make a data-driven ordering decision versus using gut feeling? And my answer to this is, next slide, there are tons of forecasting systems out there already. This is none of what I've told you is new. These forecasting systems have been used for decades in supermarkets successfully. The problem is that they're built for center store goods. They're built for dry products. They're not built for the challenges of fresh produce, because fresh produce is a world of its own. It's completely different than the rest of the store. So next slide. So fresh produce is so different from the rest of the store because you have, first of all, short and variable shelf lives on fruits and veggies, right? You don't have an expiration date on an apple. It really varies based on the season, based on the temperature. It depends. You have very intense seasonality on fresh produce items. Basically, depending on the weather, the demand for fresh produce items can change daily pretty drastically. You have products that are sold by weight, not by piece. You know this as a customer. You know, the cashier will often type in like a 3-digit code when you buy a banana. But they use the same code for 3 different types of bananas. So it leads to a big mess within the data of the supermarket. And you have very messy item IDs because you're procuring from different local suppliers, and you're basically selling it all under the same thing, even though it's not. And ultimately, that leads to such a mess that existing forecasting systems have a garbage in, garbage out problem. So you could have the best forecasting system in the world, but if you're feeding it pretty garbage data, which results from this, you're going to get garbage order recommendation. And that's why people still do the ordering manually, because that's actually better. So next slide. And so, yeah, that's why we built FreshFlow. FreshFlow allows produce teams on the shop floor to order the optimal amount of product every day. And we basically built our forecasting system with all of the challenges about produce departments that I just told you in mind. And so it starts with an app, next slide, that is used by the store team on the shop floor. The app guides the team on the shop floor through their order pretty much and tells them for every item exactly how much they need to order. How we determine this is, of course, it's also based on a forecast. So we look at all of the historical data that we can get from the supermarket. We look at external data like the weather, like holidays, like local events, and how we're able to deal with the messiness of the produce data without boring you with the details is we're able to learn relationships between the messy item IDs from local suppliers and the item IDs that the products are sold under. We're able to learn things like the shelf lives of the products and probability distributions around them. But basically, it just tells the user how much they need to order of what. And if you go to the next slide and then again the next slide.
Can you try to conclude, please?
Yes. Sorry about that. So yeah, we're able to reduce, and then the next slide, we're able to reduce food waste by 22% so far for the grocery retailers we work with. And we're also able to increase revenues at the same time. And then, yeah, on the next slide, I just have some numbers with some Intermarché stores that we've done. So we're already deployed and working with many retailers. And our partner Metro on the next slide is one of them that we're going to be launching with on DC level as well. But since I went a little over time, that's already enough. So thank you everyone. And sorry about the extra minute.
Thank you, Avik. Very, very interesting tool. We will have probably questions, but let's move now to Jana Wilwock, representing Aldi South Group. So a retailer. She will talk us about circular economy policies, including packaging, green claims, sustainable products. So maybe connected also to what we already heard with another example. So please, Jana.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having us. If we're going to talk about circular economy, I'm sure I'm going to need more than 5 minutes, but maybe I start out with introducing Aldi South first. If you could cue the slides. Thank you very much.
So maybe not 5, but 7. Let's try to be in 7,
no,
8
keep
minutes.
It short, but we can take the circular economy afterwards bilaterally, of course. So Aldi South Group, or Aldi, is a pretty much household name at this point, but allow me to introduce ourselves a little bit further. If you could go to the next slide, please. And to also make a reference to our sister company, Aldi North. So there are 2 Aldis out there. I represent Aldi South, and looking at these slides, you always think the font size is big enough, but I apologize. I will just run through those numbers and you can have a look later on. So just to explain that Aldi is a discounter, and what that means is that we try with 3 core values to come to our customers with simplicity, consistency, and responsibility. And as a food retailer, of course, that goes in with food waste. So that's why we're very delighted to talk about some of our business cases today as well. We have over 6,000 stores worldwide. So we're not only a European store, but we also have stores in the, if you go to the next slide, maybe that's easier to see on the map. Thank you very much. So in Europe, we have stores in Ireland, in the UK, Germany, Switzerland, Hungary, Austria, Slovenia, and Italy. And worldwide, we're also in the US, China, and Australia. So if you've been to an Aldi store here in Belgium or in France, that is our sister company, Aldi North. And if there are questions on why there's an Aldi North and Aldi South, I'm happy to take those afterwards bilaterally and offline, because that will also not fit into the 5 minutes. If you could please move to the next slide. I'm here to talk about our responsibility aspect when it comes to food waste. And we talked about how retailers, of course, not only contribute to food waste at one of the last stages within the food supply chain, but also of how we have the opportunity to talk to consumers directly and also, try to guide consumer when it comes to using the especially fresh produce and, how they then deliver it at home. So taking that responsibility seriously, you will see that as part of our core strategy for 2030, we want to make sure that sustainability is affordable to our customers. So we also heard from the MEPs before that, when it comes to food, it does not necessarily mean sustainability affordable, meaning cheap, but it means that it is accessible to everyone, and that, the responsibilities are included in that as well. If you move to the next slide, please. I will zoom in on the food waste part of our strategy, and we'll spend a little bit more time here. There are 2 measures under our sustainability goals that we have that I would like to share with you. So the first one is that in all of our stores, distribution centers, and our corporate offices, we will prevent food waste from going to landfill and from incineration. I would just like to point out that these goals are internationally, so these are not only dependent on our EU stores, but also worldwide. And then the second one is that we support our suppliers and customers to reduce food waste, which means that, of course, those are our goals. What are the measures that we're trying to undertake to actually get to achieving these goals? There are 4 measures in very small fonts, so I will just read them out for you. The first one is also what our colleagues from Freshful just mentioned, that it is about planning. So when we plan day to day, and we also use a smart, intelligent ordering system, which then automatically fills orders from stores to distribution centers. And that means, of course, we try to minimize surpluses in the stores from the very beginning on. And then we have short distances where we establish between our stores and distribution centers, and we also have optimized our cold chain. And of course, the colleagues from Electrolux already talked about how important it is to refrigerate and keep the foods at a certain temperature. And then we have the in-store measures, which one of them is price incentives, where we try to offer products or a certain range of products that are close to expiry date with a reduction, with a 30% reduction, to then also, incentivize the customer to take these home and not leave them in the store. And then at the very last stage, so if none of these measures have worked, we go for food donations. And in Germany and Austria especially, we have long-lasting, and I mean long-lasting, relationships with local food banks, where we then try to see that those surpluses from our stores go into the right hands. If you move to the next slide, please. The 4 measures that I mentioned in the previous slide, of course, are horizontal measures that most of our competitors work on as well. They might have not as optimized it as we have, but of course, they strive to reduce food waste in their stores as well. So I figured if I go into the business cases, I share with you certain aspects that not only show our responsibility, but also our creativity as a company, where we try to look holistically at not only what is our immediate horizon when it comes to food waste, which is store level and distribution centers, but how can we integrate the entire food supply chain in our measures and our efforts as well? So with Krumme Dinge, which is a measure that we have, or a project that we have in Germany, which translates roughly into crooked things, we try to bring not only marketing standard 1, and I can use this term in the European Parliament because everyone here will understand, not only marketing standard 1, but also offer marketing standard 2 products in our stores, so that customers see that, you know, even if there are slight dents or maybe cosmetic imperfection for certain produces, that those do not suffer when it comes to taste. And, you know, yeah, there's no difference between their flawless counterparts. And this approach addresses the issue of food waste already in the upstream supply chain. And then if you please move on to the next slide. The other business case that I wanted to share with you comes from Austria, where we collaborate with a company called Unverschwendet, and which translates roughly to not wasted, where we also try to work with agricultural food surpluses and put them already into a different product. So here you have a I think it's called a spread in English. And then we have soups and pastos where we use those surpluses and, you know, make sure that they don't get wasted at harvesting, but then are used in products that we then marketed under Rettenswert, which is translated into worth saving. And by our estimation, we have rescued with that millions of kilos of food throughout Hofer. And since its introduction at Hofer stores, it's around 500 tons of food that have been salvaged. And with these two business cases, we wanted really to show you that there's measures already undertaken, first horizontally at store level, at distribution level, but also that especially we're looking at the agri opinion on Waste Framework Directive, that we need to look broader into the entire food supply chain. And when it comes to collaboration, that we don't shy away from looking further than our immediate responsibilities. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now to Christoph Dirksen's Global Public Affairs Director to Good to Go, coming also with large experience in European institutions, but passion by disruptive and innovative economic solutions. You know, Christoph, sometimes we need disruptive solutions inside of European institutions also. But let's see what you did outside of Europe.
I can't cover that in the 5 minutes. I'm sorry. Thank you very much, and thank you very much to the EFF, the European Food Forum, and to MPs Cholos and Tolleret for hosting this event. We're very excited to be part of it, particularly in this context of the discussions on the EU Waste Framework Directive, as we're looking at legally binding food waste reduction targets. Next slide, please. At Too Good To Go, our mission is to inspire and empower everybody to fight food waste together. And I want to stress the words empower and together. By empowering, we mean that we want to create and make available very simple, very easy tools to allow everybody to contribute to the fight against food waste on a daily basis. And with the together part, it's about highlighting that food waste is a complex challenge and that it requires different solutions and flexibility and cooperation across the food supply chain to tackle the issue effectively. And with that, I think it's worth making a link to the discussions on the EU Waste Framework Directive to stress that we have an opportunity at the moment, and especially would like to call out the need to work towards ambitious food waste reduction targets. The way we see it is that these targets are about bringing everybody on board on the fight against food waste. We have different countries setting out ambitious measures, as the Commission has shown. We have different types of food businesses that are doing their parts as well. But with measures, we believe that it's an opportunity to bring everybody on board of the fight against food waste. Next slide, please. So what we've set out to do with Too Good To Go is, as I said, really to provide a very simple solution to allow everybody to play their part in the fight against food waste. It's an app-based solution on the smartphone, and it basically connects consumers to stores that have surplus food at the end of the day. And the way it works is that you scroll through the app, you look for the stores in your neighborhood, in your surroundings, and you order a surprise bag of surplus food at discounted price that you pick up at the store at the pre-arranged time. So very simple, very easy, very user-friendly. Next slide, please. We like to think of our solution as a triple win solution. It's a win for consumer who are able to access quality food, good food at a discounted price. It's a solution for our partner stores that we work with. So in food services, with retail, with small independent stores, very much across the food supply chain, who we can help to save their surplus food whilst also reducing their costs. And at the end, it's also a win for the planet because it enables to reduce the emissions that are created by food waste otherwise. Next slide, please. So Too Good To Go has been around for about 7 years at the moment. Started in Denmark originally. We've grown to 17 markets by now. We've saved over 300 million meals from going to waste. And obviously, we're very proud of those numbers. It translates to saving 4 meals per second at the moment. And maybe worth highlighting also is that this number of meals saved translates into almost 800,000 tons of CO2e avoided. I can get into the details of how that is calculated, so I won't do it here, but happy to discuss that in more detail. It's really very interesting. Next slide, please. One of the, I stressed in the beginning of what I was saying is that we think it's important to work together to address the issue of food waste. And we've noticed that also in manufacturing, we see surplus food. It occurs for different types of reasons. It can be faulty packaging issues. It can be problems with or mismatches between supply and demand. It can be problems linked to the expiry date and not sufficient time left on the date for it to be brought to the retailer. So we've developed a solution also to address the surplus problem within manufacturing. It's called Magic Parcels. It works a bit different. Basically, you order it on the app, just like with the surprise bags. But instead of going to the shop, it is sent to your home in the form of a surprise box of products that would have gone to waste otherwise. Next slide, please. And finally, I want to highlight our Look, Smell, Taste campaign. Again, food waste is a problem that occurs throughout the food supply chain, and including very much so at the consumer level. So we started this campaign that really is aimed at creating a stop and pause moment with consumers for best before products, so that they don't discard them just at the date and really use their senses, trust on their senses for these best before products before throwing them away. Best before products are perfectly safe and good to use after the date. They are an indication of optimal product quality, not of product safety. And so we're working with retail's own brands and also with manufacturers, obviously, to integrate this label on the products to create that sort of behavioral awareness moment with consumers. And lead to less food waste at the consumer level. This campaign is now live with about 500 partners, and we estimate, hard to calculate, we estimate that the label is visible on more than 7 billion products today across the markets where we operate. Next slide, please. Oh, there we are. So I just want to close with saying that there are different solutions available in the market to reduce food waste at all levels of the food supply chain. And we have a real opportunity and momentum to adopt ambitious food waste reduction targets at European level now, and we should seize that momentum. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christoph. Now I will give the floor to Enrico Derfinger, who is president of Eurotalk International, with an extensive high-level experience as a chef. He was personal chef of English royal family and also in White House, with the first Michelin star in 1994. In 2012, he was elected president of Eurotalk Italy, and in 2014 and 2017 elected president of Eurotalk International, and now very involved in strengthening relation with chefs in Europe and Asia. He also has extensive experience in restoration in Asia. So So please, Enrico. Is Enrico connected? So let's see whether you have questions for the previous interventions, waiting for Enrico's connection. Okay. So are there questions for these interventions till now? Please.
Oops. I have a question to Good to Go. Have you conducted any studies on the consumer levels? What is happening actually with the food purchased by Too Good To Go, and how much of this food is really saved and how much of it it's ending as a consumer waste?
Yes, very good questions. It's actually one of the first things we wanted to know a few years ago, and we had Wageningen University in the Netherlands conduct a study on the impact of our model. It concluded that it's a study from 18, so I have to think. It concluded that just over 90% of the products are actually consumed. Of course, we also used the study to then look a bit more in depth at why people use Too Good To Go, and also what exactly are in which ways they are consumed. And there, I have to be honest, I don't remember the division, but there was a division between people that use them themselves. We had the numbers on what percentage people then actually freeze the products to consume later, because I mean, you can save a surprise bag at a bakery store and you'll end up with 5 loaves of breads. Obviously, that's not for immediate consumption, but then you freeze your bread for the week, for example. And then some use Too Good To Go in that sense also to share the food. So they are aware that not everything that they then get is for their own consumption, or they might actually not like something, and then you can share or give like that. Yes, it was 90% that is then actually consumed. Maybe worth highlighting also is that, the policy that we apply is that you can always cancel a bag when you pick it up, since you don't know in advance what's going to be in the bag, and that's core to our model. We really want to save food waste, and so we leave flexibility to the store to put in the bag what is actually in surplus at the end of the day. And so you might arrive at the store and find out that you're allergic to this. You don't like this, and so you can always refuse at pickup if you're then afraid that it would go to waste, of course.
Thank you. I also have a question for you. Did you consider also to extend these applications to connection between consumers and directly farmers, especially in fruits and vegetable production, because we know that there are more perishable products. There are some farmers selling directly on the market. Sometimes they have the same problem to adapt the quantity produced to what they can sell or not on the market, and maybe could be interesting to connect them also directly to consumers. Do you have already experience in this field?
It's a very good idea. I think the way we...
So 10% of your business, if it works.
The way we set out was to build a solution that is more for food services and independent stores in the beginning. And then we started to look at other sides of the value chain and where we could make an impact as well. We broadened more towards retailers. We also broadened more towards manufacturers with the parcel solution. So we're trying to adapt to offer solutions that really work well for different sides of the parts of the food supply chain. We haven't reached primary production yet, but who knows?
Thank you. Other questions? I have also a question for Jana, I think, from Aldi. I have seen in your presentation that you try to ensure supply from short distances. So are you adapted in the contracts in order to have local supply with local farmers? Do you put accent on local farmers then main chains of supply with some fresh products especially?
Thank you for the question. So the short distances referred to our distribution centers, because as you can imagine, our stores need to have one centralized distribution center from which we then supply our stores daily. So that was meant that we have very short distances between our stores and there. We also offer regional products. So there, of course, they still go to the distribution centers so that we make sure that, all the stores are filled and supplied correctly. But that is very much dependent on the region and very much dependent also on the season. So because, we cannot always offer regional tomatoes in Germany, for example, so that really depends on the season there. But we try to offer as many regional products as we can, seasonal products as we can, also with the shortest distance that we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Luisela, are we...
He has some problem of connections, unfortunately. So I think that he's trying to reconnect. You know what? We can go further with Elena.
We'll move.
Yeah.
If there are no other questions. I have another question for Hannah. I am thinking, do you consider, because I think in the current framework, maybe for a business as this one of Electrolux, it's more about to sell services to the consumers than freaks. But in order to sell services, this means to ensure kind of trainings for consumers in order to have a better understanding about the performance of their freaks, for example, and how to use in a best way freaks. So I understood that you have a internet site on that. Do you have other tools to be in touch with your clients in order to train them how to use better your freaks that you sell?
That's a very valid question. Thank you for that. As you say, services is something that we are looking into. We are doing that with other appliances already. Of course, for a hob or oven, it's more obvious to sell recipes or talk with chefs or so on. So the fridge is not as obvious, but we are looking into that. And the ways how we communicate with our consumers will mainly now be with our app that we are developing. That will be a new thing. So once you buy a fridge from Electrolux, you can connect to the app and get directly a lot of information, but also the opportunity to connect with us in a new way. So that's one way how we will reach our consumers. Then there was someone who already mentioned that going to the kids is one way how to start education. And that's something we are also doing. We have a program called Food Heroes, where we educate kids in how to be more sustainable when it comes to food and consumption. And of course, we are discussing food waste a lot. So we are also reaching the younger generation in that way. I hope that was a good answer to your question.
Thank you. Thank you for it. So if there are no other questions, I will give the floor to Elena Dinu, Advocacy and Development Director at the Romanian Federation of Food Banks. So Elena, you will represent food banks today because Angela Frigo, Secretary General of European Food Banks Associations, unfortunately is not able to attend the meeting. So you come with an institutional experience also in the Ministry of Agriculture. You work on the strategy of the ministry related to food waste. And now from the other side, you are working with food banks in Romania. So if you can share with us your experience and your insights about this experience, so please.
Thank you very much for invitation. Actually, not only in the ministry, I have also the corporate experience in the retail side, especially with the fresh food. But now, because I work really close with the European Federation of Food Banks, and also I work in Bucharest for the National Federation of Food Banks, I want to start to explain a little bit what we do there, because for me, I think it's a good model that can work in the supply chain as a solution. Actually, if it's possible to go in the next slide, who we are as a food banks. It's a social service that fight with food waste, poverty, and social exclusion by supporting the charity that look after the people that they are coming from vulnerable backgrounds. Actually, the main and important things here is that we don't work with the end beneficiary. We work with other NGOs that they have social programs to support the people that they are in need. The next slide, please. Okay, so we are the next one, I think. Yeah. We are not only a national, at the national level, we are 9 banks, but also at the European level, we are represented in all the countries, and as social services. And as our vision, we believe that no one should go hungry, and the providing food is the first step for immediately help to respond to the primary need and that cannot be delayed. So it's the first step in considering the complexity of the human needs. The next one, please. And the next one. For us, food waste is a component that has a social, economic, environment, and the educational part. So it is involved in all this area. And actually, that's why we support another NGOs to help them to have the educational program also for the kids and also for the adult ones, to support them from social point of view, economically, and obvious from the environment point of view. What we do every day, the next slide, please. We recover the surplus food that is donated from our partners, and we work with partners from the processing area, from the distribution, from the retailers. And actually in Romania, we have a good example here. We have a national legislation that work. Even this month, we have a new legislation, so we added more things over there, and we'll still want to improve step by step. We recover the surplus food from the distribution, for example, from the retailers that they have 10 days of before expiring data. So we work with almost all the retailers on the market. They tell us when they have a product that they have 10 days as a ending data of legal one. But in the same time, we take also the surplus of food. That means, for example, for the producers area, we have, for example, a producer of biscuits that they produce biscuits, and sometimes they have like a second quality of the biscuits because so they are broken or they are not so good quality, but not from the point of view of the taste or of the quality or something like this, but not looking so good. And actually, it is impressive how much food we can take like this as a surplus or something happening in the producers. We work also with meat on the same example, because, for example, if they put the slice in the pack, they have the ending part of the meat, and they don't use it. So actually, we redistribute this food that is a perfectly good food, actually. So we redonate this one only to the other NGOs that they have programs for the peoples. The next one, in Romania, we are a structure at the national level. We have like 9 banks, and we work with the European Federation of Food Banks, with the national authorities, with mass media, with all the partners. And we promote the policies to combat and reduce the food waste and poverty. We are quite involved in the working group with the ministry, and not only we have also connection with the Embassy of Sustainability, that is NGOs that work especially with not only with the food area, but with everybody that has the sustainable goals in place. The next slide, please. About the Romanian Federation of Food Bank, we started in 2020 to become operational in the second part of the 2021. We're starting with 5 regional members, and now we have 9 regional banks. We try to have the banks at the regional level in whole country to cover the national part, whole country. And together we are a network that start working really good. The next one, please. We have affiliation on European Food Federation, on Embassy of the Sustainability in Romania, and we are a good collaboration with and partnership with an Institute of the Circular Economy and Environmental Studies that work and do a lot of projects. The next one, please. The impact in our work in numbers, we have 20,000 tons until now, because we have not so much big quantities, but now what we want to build a new warehouse in Bucharest that is really big, and to have capacity to take more food. The next one, please, and the next one. So we have only 15 employees. We work also with the volunteers, and now we try to have the project Erasmus for the volunteers, and try to have also impact on education on people. And we go to the university to take volunteers to join us, to help us, because we don't collect only the surplus food. We have also national collecta. 2 times of a year, in the Easter and in the Christmas period. We go with all the partners. We have it in this Christmas, like almost 900 stores. And we work with volunteers, and we succeed to collect the food also for the people that goes in the store to buy food. It's in Italy, for example, it is really normal to do that, but for Romania it is a little bit new, and now we try to fix this one. We have in the Christmas 3 days of national collecta, so the impact, it was really good. The next one, please. So actually, we have like 700 partners as NGO that we help them at the national levels, and our mission is support everybody, and also the founding partners, to help them to understand what are our needs and how we want to work to recover more surplus on the market. The next one, please. It's, we have some image from the food collection in stores because we started in 2019, but now we are involved with almost all the retailers on the market. We involve more and more stores. And we have some figures from the next one, please, for the collection from Easter and for the Christmas. For us, for example, for the Easter last year, we have only 29 tons of food that the people donated, but the surprise, and here we have the like 3 weeks collecta in the stores, but with no volunteers. And in the Christmas, if you can please, the next slide, we change and we have only 3 days of collecta in the stores, and the figures, they are quite different because we have volunteers. So we understand now that it is quite important to have to not work only to recover the surplus from the market, but also to involve other people in our work. To spread the good thing that we do. What we do, we have annual meeting and we try to have training for all the teams in the country because what we implement the HACCP and traceability for all the banks. We work with the warehouse and with the cars, and we have like a special car for food. So we don't take the food if we don't have special cars. But also what it is really important, we take the example for the other colleagues banks as Italy, for example. We are involved also in Romania for the Ukrainian crisis when we have the refugees and help us. We have like a corporate volunteering, and we try all the retailers that they are involved and help us to come also as a volunteers. We have the solidarity boxes, but what we propose, what is our mission for this year, to say like this, is to make the digitalization of the data, because we want to we work on implement a new system. Yes, it's the final one, to implement a new system that help us to collect all the data on the categories, because we work with together with FEBA on data collection, and this year we will have the real figures on the categories. And we will go also to the ministry to have the same categories of the product, to be able to collect the right data and to have the data for also for Romania. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena. I don't know if you have questions for Elena.
After, because we have the member of the Congress.
Okay, so let me introduce now Chelly Pingree, who is US representative from the Maine's 1st Congressional District since 2009. She is also currently co-founder of Congressional Food Recovery Caucus. Chelly is one of the most, let's say, pro-European members of the Congress. We had the pleasure to meet her some weeks ago in Washington, and we exchanged about our mutual experience related also to food waste. So Chelly started as in an organic farm on the island of North Haven in Maine. She served as for 8 years as in Maine Senate, become then a national CEO of Common Cause in 2008. In 2008, she was elected representing Maine in the United States Congress. Shelley also wrote a Local Farm Food and Jobs Act, a comprehensive package of reforms to agriculture policy that will expand opportunities for local and regional farmers and make it easier for consumers to have access to health food. Part of Chelly's provisions bill were included in the Farm Bill, which was passed by the Congress and who is now enforced. She and her husband own and operate Turner Farm in the island, a diversified organic farm that produce meat and cheese. So Shelley comes with an extensive experience on the spot on organic production, but also on the legislative institutions as a policy maker. So please, Shelley, first of all, thank you very much being with us today. And we will be very interested to have your experience and your vision about food waste in US. So please.
Sure. Well, thank you very much for having me join you today. And I've had a chance to listen to the participants earlier. So thanks for including me in that, because this is as much a learning experience for me as it is a chance to share a little bit about what we're doing in the United States. And I would say our experiences are truly quite similar. And thank you for visiting us. I enjoyed meeting you and your colleagues and having a chance to exchange a little bit in Washington, D.C. So I'm sorry I'm not with you there physically. I'm really glad to participate. And honestly, so much of what we're dealing with is exactly what you're talking about today. And I appreciated someone, maybe this was you framing this as a moral, environmental, and financial challenge. I think our numbers are quite similar in the United States. We waste about 30 to 40% of the food. A quarter to a third ends up in landfills, which we know is very toxic to the environment. It costs us over $200 billion a year. And basically, we're wasting enough calories to feed the 35 million Americans who are going hungry or not getting enough food every day. So we have somewhat of the same breakdown between what happens in manufacturing and the supply chain and in the home. And really, our challenge is just to figure out how to invest enough money in these changes, in changing this, and also to have the right policies. You mentioned I've been working on this. I am an organic farmer, and I've been involved in food and agriculture since forever. And I've been in Congress for 15 years. And I really didn't start out focusing as much on food waste, but like so many of you who are now dedicated to this, I came to learn early on that it is all of these major challenges, including a huge part of our climate change challenge, as well as just the moral issue of it food not going to the people who needed it. So I've refocused on this over the last few years. And as you mentioned, we do a lot of our policy in the United States through the Farm Bill. That is our policy and financial statement on agriculture and food policy. It happens every 5 years. And we are now in the process of working on the 2023 Farm Bill. And if Congress can come together and get an agreement, we'll pass it this year. If not, we won't. But the last one I worked on was the 2018. And as you mentioned, some of the things that I care about, we managed to insert into that language. That was when we created a food and waste liaison at the United States Department of Agriculture. We started a food waste pilot. We created our local agriculture marketing program, which has a lot to do with on-farm reduction of food waste. We now have that food waste liaison at the USDA, our Department of Agriculture. But in this Farm Bill, we're trying to create an entire office so that we would have much greater capacity to assist those in working on food waste, to write legislation, to structure the programs. We really need to enhance that policy. And we have a lot of support from our Department of Agriculture on this. They recently released a report in December of last year, and that was in coordination with the Environmental Protection Agency, recognizing this as a food supply chain and agriculture, but it's also an environmental issue, and the FDA, which is our Food and Drug Administration. They're there to keep food safe. So we needed to put together a national strategy with all of them and have done so. Some of the progress that we've made at the USDA, we turned our food waste pilot into something that's called the Composting and Food Waste Reduction Cooperative Agreement, but that's basically agreements and grants that the Agriculture Department does with our state and local governments. So they've handed out about $20 million since 2020. That's going to supporting municipal composting operations, subsidies for people who can't afford to participate in some of the private composting pickups that happen on the street, creating community compost hubs, workshops on how people can do more composting in their own backyard, and also projects on food waste that got the food waste into other venues, feeding it to animals, creating worm projects, a variety of things. So they've been quite creative with it and looking for ways to do more. Obviously, that's just on the composting side. Within the framework that the USDA and the EPA set up in December 23, they set up a hierarchy that would look very much like what all of you are talking about today: preventing food waste, donating food that's not going to be used, and only things like composting or biodigesters as a last resort. We have a whole host of legislation now that we're proposing to insert into this Farm Bill or to pass as standalone legislation. You may have heard from the European side that Congress is not a high-functioning Congress this year, but this is one issue where we have generally bipartisan agreement. I like to say everybody had a grandmother who told them not to waste food, and it's not a partisan issue. So we've come to a fair amount of agreement about it, but sometimes it's just the mechanics of getting it done. So like I said, many of these bills that I'll just describe a few of are related to policy that could be part of our Farm Bill as that sort of all comes together. They're almost all bipartisan. And the good news is from the early days when I started to work on this, I have a lot more colleagues interested in participating. And the broader the number of people who want to be engaged in this topic, the more likely we are to get something passed. One of my bills is the Food Date Labeling Act. You already have done more with this in the EU, but it's basically to have consistency in labeling, the idea of a best by and a use by date. We only have voluntary standards right now that are set by the manufacturer or occasionally set by the states, and with 50 different states. You can imagine that most food manufacturers are behind this because they would like to have more uniformity throughout the country instead of a variety of different ways that dairy is handled or processed food is handled. I'm sure you'll all share this understanding. I sometimes joke my bill should be called the Domestic Harmony Act, because almost everybody has a person in their house who looks at the label and says, oh gosh, we got to throw this away. And the other person says, oh, no, we can keep this. It's probably fine. And often it is fine. But without consistency or some kind of education campaign to help people understand how to use those labels, a lot of food gets thrown away, and it may be the single biggest cause of food waste that we have in our country. Variety of other bills that we're working on. And I would say on that one, I've had that bill for quite a long time, and we've been working to get closer and closer on industry and executive branch cooperation. Sometimes it's just there's so many cooks in the soup that it's hard to get everyone aligned. I think there's general agreement on it. I'm sponsoring a bill with another Republican called No Time to Waste. That's really just to create a more serious, well-funded office at the USDA to move forward on these things. I have a bill I've worked on for a long time called the Agriculture Resilience Act, which is all about these kinds of issues and climate change related challenges to agriculture. But that has some specific things in there about our federal contracting and using the procurement power we have at the federal government to require a donation clause and put teeth in it. We have more bills related to composting. We have one very specifically on schools. And I've heard people mention earlier, I wholeheartedly agree that the younger you can engage kids in this topic, the more likely they are to come home and remind their parents not to throw away the food or to look at other ways to use it. We've passed one bill on food donation improvement to get through some of the legal obstacles that were there, and also have bills on tax deductions and credits. In our most recent funding bill of the previous administration, which we call the Inflation Reduction Act, there is $5 billion that goes to climate reduction grants for the EPA. And one of the things we're pleased about is knowing that many of those grants which go to our states and municipalities are being used for things like composting operations and targeting food waste in their climate reduction goal. So that's great. We're just looking forward to continuing these relationships with our states and municipalities, the more we can bring this into compliance throughout our country, the more I think benefit we'll have. Our states have been doing some valuable creative ideas. We sometimes call them the laboratories of democracy, but we need to align a lot of our policies so that they're more effective. And also, it's really great to have this opportunity to share with all of you, because I think it's been mentioned many times, sort of aligning those best practices, learning from each other. We are constantly looking for creative ideas, whether they're in the private sector, some of the voluntary things we've seen going on, and some of the things you've been talking about, the phone apps that people are using. There's many, many ways to target this, and we really have to use all the tools in the toolbox to be effective. And we also have to have policies and legislation that have real teeth in it. I think as we get closer and closer to trying to meet some of these deadlines and not making as much progress as we want. So thanks so much for including me. Really, really happy to be participating with all you today, and thank you for all your great work over there.
Thank you, Shelley, a lot for your intervention. If you agree, can we take 1 or 2 questions if the participants have questions? So please, can you present yourself?
Yeah, hi, my name is Krystyna Lisecki. I work for the European Commission on the food waste file. So my colleagues are the ones that created the proposal and adopted the proposal to set food waste reduction targets at EU level. I was wondering if you have ever considered such an approach at your level. Thank you.
Yeah, we have some, we do have food waste targets through the USDA, EPA, and yes, we do have those and would like to get sort of more teeth in them. But I do think, yes, so we absolutely believe in the food waste targets, and we're anxious to see more and more of them set throughout our states and municipalities. The challenge is we're now entering the era where a lot of these targets are beginning to approach, and I think we're not moving fast enough. So it's sometimes so abstract to say, well, we'll do this by 2030, or we'll get this done by 2050. But we now know that we have to have a lot more teeth, either in our policies or a lot of financial support or incentives. We really just have to get it all moving. So wholeheartedly agree with the goals and really appreciate the work you're doing over there. Oftentimes your targets help us to have justification for why we need targets, and they help us with some of the information that we need. So thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Hi, so I'm representing Animal Health Europe, and I would like to ask, if I'm not wrong, you spoke about on-farm loss. So I wanted to ask you if you are looking at animal health and animal morbidity and mortality as a kind of food loss also.
Yeah, it's a very good point, I think. Very good point. It's never been a part of the goals or targets that we've worked on, but we have had separate legislation dealing with animal health, animal welfare, and there's no question that could have an impact. And I've supported a whole variety of the sort of healthier standards for animals on farms. So I think it's a really good approach, and I haven't really thought about how to try to work that into our targets, but I think a very worthy suggestion.
Thank you. Are there, please, Christoph?
Hi, Representative Pingree. My name is Christoph Dirksens. I work for Too Good To Go. You mentioned the hierarchy that the EPA has in place to sort of serve as a guidance for how to prevent or deal with surplus food. And I think last year the EPA changed the hierarchy system into a scale-based system that, in our very humble and modest opinion, really reduces the sort of focus on preventive measures and redistribution measures, and really visually shows more of an, let's say, equal solution outcome for everything that can be done with surplus food. And so this might not be your area, but I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on the reasoning why that has been changed from a hierarchy to a scale system. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. You know, it's interesting, as you mentioned that I just got out the food scale and sort of looked at it, and I hadn't really thought about the visual representation of that. So you've provided me a very good question for my next hearing with the EPA, and I will tackle that. And if you want to connect with me directly and you know, have more conversations about that, I'll just tell for anybody in the room, my email is my name. It's you just have to look up the spelling of my name on this document, but it's shelley@pingree.com. So feel free, anyone, to be in touch with me or come contact my office via the website, and Chelsea, who's also on this, can connect with any of you. But that's a really good point. And as you said that to me, I looked at it and I think, yeah, that's obviously not the way we should be putting this on a value scale. So I have no idea why they did that. And I will say Too Good To Go has a phone app that it works in part of my state. So thank you for the work that you're doing. I know people appreciate it.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, really, thanks a lot, Shelley, for your very valuable intervention. And let's keep in touch, because I think we as Europeans also have a lot of things to learn from your way to do policies. We told about more coherence in our policies. I really appreciate the fact that you are more result-oriented in US. We like very much regulations and targets, and this is why we organize also this debate today, to see how we can enforce it and how we can use valuable experience on the spot. You do a lot for incentivizations in order to obtain results. So I think we have a lot of things to do together, and the transatlantic cooperation now and especially in the future, I think will be very useful for both of us. So thank you very much for your availability today, and let's keep in touch.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Okay, so I think with Enrico it's done for today. It will not be possible. Yeah, so we will have another event talking about chefs and gastronomy and Michelin stars. So I don't know if you have other questions for our intervenants today. Otherwise, I think we are almost just on time. Thank you very much for contributing to this very useful debate, anyway useful for us in the European Parliament. I noted the idea of more coherence in our policies, how to also to reinforce our instruments in innovation and spread good practices. And I think from our side, but also from the side of the Commission, coming with the legislation, which should also come with more budget for innovation in order to finance and to support good ideas and good practices, to invest also more in the communication in order to spread these good practices, consumer information and education also, and we can see that on the other side of the Atlantic, they are also thinking on the same things. Consumer information, education also about local, seasonal, and quality nutrition food, and also to make them understand that their choice and our choice as consumers are not only individual choice, but also with a collective impact. And I heard also about best by, use by dates. We are waiting also for some new legislative proposals from the Commission on it, because I think best by and use by dates and also the sustainable food chain legislative proposal coming from the Commission will help us also, or will contribute also in reducing food waste in Europe. So thank you very much for your participation. Let's keep in touch. Luisela, if you want to make an announcement about the next event.
Yes, so next event is going to be on March 21st, and it's going to be very interesting on proteins. All the different kind of proteins, so the discussion will be quite interesting, always with the way that the European Food Forum is doing. So not taking position and allowing everyone to express their own position, and also with scientists and also considering, of course, the consumer's point of view. Okay, thank you.
So this first stage is closed here. So now if you want to continue to exchange informally around a glass of, I don't know, water or wine, let's see. So I think here on the hall, you are very welcome. So thank you very much. And see you.